Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jason Williams, and I'm with my tag team partner, Blake Castetter, and we are the Sunday Fun Day guys. Blake, you're looking very festive. Hopefully, our people on YouTube are watching this video today. Yeah.
Getting the
Look at
Christmas spirit, Jason.
Santa Blake. Santa Blake. Santa
Ho, ho,
Blake.
ho.
Oh, ho, ho. I can't believe this championship week. I mean, are you in one? Are you out of one? Or let's talk about it. I mean, we are the Sunday Fun Day guys. We got to talk about it a little bit, right?
Yeah, made some
Yeah.
bad choices last round. Didn't
All right.
advance.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of we all make bad choices in life, buddy. It happens. But
Speaking of which, let's see that shirt of
oh
yours.
yeah. There we go. Look. Oh yeah, it's bad, man. I don't there's a bunch of animals on here, and I don't even know if it's an owl or a penguin with a
Yeah, it's an
Santa hat
owl, a
on
penguin.
and a Christmas tree. This is as ugly can get, man. You know, I tell you what, you look good, bro. Let me tell you, you look good. Look at you. I mean, you can wear that to a Christmas party for sure. This I might get laughed at. You get some ladies looking at you, buddy. Let me tell you.
Woo!
Yeah. Well, we are in the championship week, fanatics, and hopefully you've made it to your championship and you get something out of this episode. So, Blake, as we get into championship week, which starts on Wednesday and ends on Monday, a little bit of a different type of setup. Give me some storylines for week 17.
Well, there wasn't a whole lot, but heading into the week from week 16 and heading into week 17, we saw Tank Dell. That injury was If you saw the slow mo and you saw the screen captures that were floating around the Google land, the leg wasn't supposed to go that way.
No.
And as feared, he's out for the year, and his future, we're not even sure there with the dislocated kneecap, the torn ACL, and a bunch of other issues in that knee. That's unfortunate for him. The Texans did go out and sign Deontay Johnson. You see any relevance there?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not. I mean, if you're even contemplating playing Deontay Johnson, I mean, you must be lucky to even make it to your championship. You must have a boatload of injuries. But honestly, there's not really a lot of injuries out there in terms of like skill positions. So in terms of Deontay, I don't see any fantasy relevance in 2024. Maybe next year, but not this year.
I don't either.
Yep.
James Conner went out with a knee injury. The Cards are already out of it. I think Trey Benson would be a smash start this week if he wasn't banged up as well. So, I was going to ask if there's any fantasy relevance for Benson or Michael Carter, who ended up carrying the workload, the fourth quarter for the Cards. But again, if you're in it still, your lineup's probably pretty set from not needing to throw in a Trey Benson or a Michael Carter.
Exactly.
Barkley on pace to break Eric Dickerson's record yet again. Needs to average 133 and a half yards per game.
Wow. That's I'm still amazed that Eric Dickerson's record is still around. That was, I believe, in the mid 80s. I mean, so we're talking, I think 85. So we're talking almost 40 years ago, folks. So as great as running backs that we've seen over the last 20, 30 years, and nobody's broken that record, is a testament to how good Eric Dickerson is and was. But if anybody can do it, it definitely is Saquon.
He's on pace, and he's got the O-line for it. And now he doesn't have a QB, so he's going to be given the rock over and over and over, I imagine.
100%.
Brock Bowers made the 100 and 1,000 mark last week. Needs 10 more yards to break Ditka's rookie receiving record and 5 more receptions to break Puka's rookie receptions record.
Wow. So for those who don't know, Mike Ditka, the coach, was a tight end way back, even before I was born, Blake. That's a while ago. And he was a hell of a tight end. So for this record to still be standing after all these, I mean, we're talking at least 50 plus years. This record's been on the books for Mike Ditka. And Brock Bowers, I mean, what can you say? He was a stud at Georgia. Everybody thought he'd be good, but nobody saw him being this good, especially on a team that really hasn't had any relevancy all year.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
He's got a bright future for sure.
Yo, no doubt. Number 1 tight end off the board next year. No question.
Without question.
Yep.
Especially if they improve their quarterback. Whew.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts in the protocol. We all saw that. George Pickens was hoping to play Wednesday, but it announced that he was off the injury report just moments ago.
Mhm.
And they also announced earlier today that J.K. Dobbins has been designated to return from the injured reserve. So he's opened
Ooh,
up that 21-day practice window.
yeah.
Might be really good timing with them heading into New England, which fairly decent matchup.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they activate him. I don't know what the status. Typically, a guy who's come off of IR doesn't get activated immediately, and I would think if the Chargers are going to make this playoff run, I believe they're close to being in or close to clinching. I think they maybe want to save him because they have been doing well with Gus and
Mhm.
the other two running backs. So I may stash him in terms of the team. Fantasy, I don't think he has any relevance unless they activate him. If they do, then man, that's an interesting decision you got to make.
For sure. I
Yep.
think, but at the same time, they need to win to get in. Nothing's
Right.
locked in yet. So
Right.
activating him and then using him if needed might be an approach.
Hmm.
I don't know if I trust the Chargers backfield at this point
No.
because you don't know who it's going to be and where. Like Gus
Right.
Edwards just had the game of the year for
Hmm.
himself this week. And I'll touch on that here in a little bit, but I don't think I trust anybody in the Chargers backfield just yet.
I would agree.
So new segment heading into this week. Instead of doing our start sit,
Hmm.
we're so limited on who we feel might still be in it. We want to try and find a different way to add value. So, being in the holiday spirit, we want to talk about believing and who do we believe in. And so we're going to we're going to stay outside of the top 12, top 15, top 10, depending on the position, maybe top 4 at the quarterback. You might be in a lineup situation where you need to make a decision. You might have had Jalen Hurts as your starting quarterback, and maybe you have a backup and maybe an opportunity on the waiver wire. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through who we see as 4 players that we believe in at the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver position amongst all of the ones in that middle of the road range to hopefully help you folks make a lineup decision.
All right.
So it's starting the quarterback position. You've got your top 4, and I think they're locked and loaded. You've got Allen, Lamar, Jaden Daniels, and Joe Burrow. Hurts would be in that mix, except he is in the concussion protocol. So this was all put together following Fantasy Pros rankings for the week. So following that, you've got Baker at Carolina. You've got Darnold at Green Bay. You've got Goff traveling to San Francisco. You've got Knicks going to Cincinnati. You got Kyler against the Rams, Jordan Love against Minnesota, Purdy against Detroit at home, Richardson against the Giants, Stafford against Arizona, Mahomes at Pittsburgh, and Tua at Cleveland, as well as Herbert in New England and Caleb hosting Seattle. Jason, of those 10 to 12 that I just rattled off, who's the one that stands out to you that you would trust the most?
Oh, it has to be Jared Goff. No question.
Really?
Yeah.
Outdoors?
Outdoors, yes. Now, again, I need clearly the weather could play a factor. And this is we're shooting this on Tuesday, so I have no idea what the weather is going to be like in San Francisco. If it's raining and it's not good, then this may be a different story. But if all's looking good in terms of weather, I think you start Jared Goff with the utmost confidence. The 49ers are giving up the 5th fewest fantasy points against QB, so 14.6, which is the 5th fewest. The Lions scoring offense is scoring an average of 32 points a game, 32. And if you do remember, Fanatics, San Francisco kept Detroit from reaching the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to give you a lot of stats on why I think you should start Jared Goff. For the simple fact is they kept the Lions from the Super Bowl, and the Lions have some payback that's due to them in terms of beating the Niners in San Francisco, and they still have a lot to play for. Obviously, the Niners are out of it, but the Lions have not wrapped up anything yet, which is crazy because that division is so good. So I would start Jared Goff with the utmost confidence.
I didn't think about the narrative. I forgot about what San Francisco did to Detroit last year. And I have a feeling they're going to be pumped and ready to go. It's just, can Goff perform outdoors? And, his history has not been the greatest.
Except for last week.
Sure.
Small sample size, but he played well. I think he knows that, and I think he showed up against the Bears, who have a decent defense. They're not great, but they're not awful.
I got a good pass defense.
Yep. And he shredded them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
My most confident the one that I believe in the most out of that list is Bo Nix.
Mhm.
And it's crazy to say because I didn't even foresee him being a top 24 fantasy option going into the season. If you look at his track record from college, it was a lot of dink and dunk passes. He has impressed.
Mhm.
He brings a decent floor game or decent floor with his running game. And he's done a good job of limiting mistakes. Since week 3, he's gone 22 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. As a rookie, I mean, you can't ask for much more because your fear is you're going to throw a lot of INTs and lose games that way. Coming into Cincinnati, you and I have Cincinnati near and dear to our hearts.
Be at
Their
the game
defense,
Saturday.
Yeah, is playing better. But they're still not shutting people down. They stopped DTR last week. That's not impressive.
No.
They both still have something to play for, though. And with the over-under being 49.5 points, the Bengals are going to score points. So Bo Nix is going to have to keep up. And I don't think the running game for Denver is going to be what does it. So I would trust Nix in your lineup if you need a quarterback spot. What about number 2? Where do you stand on your second QB out of that entire list?
So my second QB is probably going to surprise you more than my first. It's actually Matthew Stafford. Over the last couple games, against Arizona, Matthew Stafford really has not played well in terms of a fantasy perspective. The Rams have won, but he was putting up 25, 30 points, earlier in the month, and he's kind of regressed a little bit. And I don't know if that's because of the defense he's playing or the weather in San Francisco was a factor. So let's just get that game out. And then let's be honest, the Jets are pretty good. They're traveling cross country. So again, they eked out a win. The offense didn't look great. It looked off and on. Kyron Williams did okay. Puka was okay. Kupp was, again, non-existent. So with that being said, Stafford's coming back home, playing the Cardinals, who have nothing to play for, and the Rams have everything to play for. So I expect Matthew Stafford to have a huge game at home against the Cardinals this week. So again, I would start Matthew Stafford over all those guys. I know that's an interesting pick, but this one's more of a gut feeling for me.
I trust Stafford, and he's at home, and he's got all of his weapons back, including Tyler Higbee. If you're going to throw a quarterback in a spot, a non-top 5 quarterback, you want one that's got the weapons at home with something to play for.
Exactly.
My second quarterback pick, and this is going way down the line. I think he was let's see, where is he at on Fantasy Pros? Coming into today, it's Tuesday, Christmas Eve. They have Justin Herbert is QB 16 heading into New England. Behind Mahomes, Stafford, Purdy, Murray, Nix, Jordan Love. The Jordan Love one I don't like at all. They've got him at 10 on the week.
Ooh.
Did you know he's had less than 28 pass attempts in the past 6 weeks?
Oh yeah.
Each game?
Yep. And who are they playing this week? Is it Minnesota?
Yeah, you got Minnesota.
I think that's the reason why.
You think they're going to throw the ball a lot?
I think if you look at the game scripts with the Vikings are they stop the run, so you got to throw. Look at Geno Smith's stats in that last week. In the loss, he threw for over 300 yards. So, from what I understand, Minnesota is great against the run, not so good against the pass. So
yeah, their pass defense is not great.
Right. And let's be honest, Green Bay has a plethora of receivers they can throw to. So I'm not surprised about that considering who they're playing. I think that has a lot to do with it.
That's fair.
Yep.
Well, I'm firing up Justin Herbert. Did you see what he did last week against a good Denver defense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he accounted for over 300 yards and 2 scores.
Mm-hmm.
They might get Dobbins back, but if not, they seem to have found a good balance. I mean, Denver's run defense is good too. A good balance of run and pass with the offense. Edwards, like I said, had his best game of the year. The Patriots are middle of the road. They're allowing 16.1 points per game on average to quarterbacks. He's probably not going to break top 5, but if you are in a tough QB dilemma, I think it's safe to have him in your lineup this week.
I would agree totally. Like if you got Jalen Hurts and you got Herbert and Hurts doesn't play, you should be happy you got Herbert because I think what's happening is Harbaugh with the injuries to the running back position, he realizes, okay, we're going to have to put the ball in our guys' hands, meaning our best player, and that's Justin Herbert. And like I've always said, man, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert flip a coin in terms of the way they play quarterback. It was almost like the Brady Rodgers comparison. I think Justin Herbert is just as good as Joe Burrow without the weapons. So I agree 100% with this start. Although New England has played well
Mhm.
in the last couple games, they played well. But again, with everything on the line, and Justin Herbert seems to be hitting his stride in terms of rapport with his receivers. I mean, some of the throws he makes are unbelievable. Let's be honest. If you've watched him throw the ball, it is the perfect way to play quarterback, the way he throws the ball. He is, if you were building a quarterback, Justin Herbert's your guy, like from top to bottom.
He really is, and they haven't trusted him. He's been dealt with injuries the past couple of years, and they
Mhm.
haven't trusted him as much. They've leaned on the run game to start the season, right? But of late, they have, and he's showing why they should.
Agreed. Agreed.
So let's head over to the running back side of things. We've got our top 12 are locked in. We've got Barkley, Gibbs, Bijan, Henry, A-Chain, Jacobs, Taylor, Kyron, Chase Brown, Hubbard, Bucky, and James Cook. But as we continue down that line, you start to see some questionable options that you maybe we can help you with. So Mix against Baltimore is the
Yeah.
first one, and he has not been performing as well as late. Aaron Jones against Green Bay, Brian Robinson against Atlanta, Rico Dowdle against Philadelphia, who had done well up until this past week, and then he disappeared. Tony Pollard against Jacksonville, Rashad White against Carolina, DeAndre Swift against Seattle. You've got Kendre Miller, who we all knew was going to have a rough run last week, but it's looking like he might be the starter again this week against Las Vegas, a much easier matchup.
Mhm.
You've got Travis Etienne, who just had the game of his year last week. He's got Tennessee this week. And then you've got the aforementioned Gus Edwards against New England. Where's your confidence lie? If you had to pick one of these, where's the top one for you, Jason?
So, well, the top one is definitely Rashard White. I mean, there's no question. The Carolina Panthers, listen to this, are allowing 25.2 points to running backs in fantasy. That's the most running back points given up by running backs in fantasy. So there's no question. I know Bucky Irvin's in there. They have a good mix between Rashard White and Bucky Irvin. You can tell in the Dallas game they really like to mix it up. They both catch balls out of the backfield. They both run hard. I think Tampa's not too happy the way they play Monday night. And I think they show up and I think they avenge that loss. And I think the two running backs have a lot to say about the outcome against the Panthers. So I would say Rashard White is my most trusted, in my opinion, out of all the running backs on this list.
That's interesting. A split backfield, and you're
Yeah.
leaning there.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I know it's it's a split back. It reminds me, and they talked about this on Monday. They talked about Gibbs and Montgomery. It's this really the kind of the same deal. They seem to have equal timeshare in terms of carries. White gets the ball in short yardage situations, and third down is more Bucky Irvin. But we saw in the game that they split, Rashad White out and threw him the ball. So again, I love the way they run their offense in Tampa. They get both backs involved, but I'm going with Rashad White this week against Carolina.
That would have been one of my picks had you not already claimed that pick. Aaron Jones is my pick, a safe pick this week, and it's a narrative. That you get the revenge game, a second revenge game. The first one worked out in his favor. He went 22 for 93. And on top of that, he was involved in the pass game with 4 catches for 46 yards. So he was around that 14 point, 15 point in half PPR, which isn't a bad performance. Green Bay's defense is good, but not great. They're allowing 17.3 fantasy points to the running back position on a game. Vikings are trying to win the division. And at this point, every single snap matters and every game matters. And with Green Bay's pass defense as good as it is, top 5 in the league, even without Alexander, I see a heavy dose of Aaron Jones this week.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of a revenge factor for Aaron Jones, but all around, he's just a good running back. Obviously, Green Bay got Jacobs, so they feel like they won, and Minnesota got Aaron Jones, and they feel like they won. So I think I think it's more of a safer pick in terms of potential production. So I would definitely go with Aaron Jones on this one as well.
Yeah, it's a nice floor.
Right.
I don't know how high the ceiling is going to be because it is a good defense he's going against.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got a good balance in your lineup, this is a solid flex RB2. Possibly, I mean, this could be an RB1 play, but I just don't see him blowing the roof off and, top 8 running back this week.
Yeah, definitely solid RB2, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right. Who's your second pick in the running back position?
Now, my second pick is going to surprise a lot of people, but especially over his last couple games, he hasn't really performed. I'm saying Joe Mixon.
Oh,
yes, Joe Mixon. And the only reason I'm saying this, so when I looked at this list and you put this list together, by the way, great job, Blake. Really appreciate you putting this. This is a good list and it's a good segment. The reason I'm going with Joe Mixon is because when you look at these players, it's about the stats, clearly. It's about the other team, but it's also about the game script. And think about what Houston doesn't have. They don't have Tank Dell. Dalton Schultz is becoming more of a factor. We'll touch on that later in the segment. But I think they need to get back to basics. I think they need to run the ball more. I think they need to get the ball to Joe Mixon more. And for that reason, and against Baltimore, that's why I'm going with Joe Mixon. Now, Jaylen Warren has some success against Baltimore catching the ball in the backfield. So potential PPR points, potential catches out of the backfield and yards out of the backfield. So that's the reason. Because of the game, I believe what the game script will be, I'm going with Joe Mixon.
So once they moved, when Kyle Hamilton got hurt, they were very susceptible to running backs out of the backfield catching the ball. And then when Kyle Hamilton came back, they moved him back to a safety position where he's not stopping. So it's almost like he didn't return. He's played phenomenal, but not necessarily stopping swing passes to backs out of the backfield. So I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. And, I love Mixon, but man, he just has not been performing of late.
Right. No, I agree. Like if you look at the performance over the last couple of weeks, he would probably be the last one you would pick. I mean, let's be honest. But I got to believe with the injury to Tank Dell being out for the season, with the depleted receiver core, I mean, does Dalton Schultz really scare you? Not really. I mean, and then Nico Collins, you can double him. Who else is left? It has to be Mixon, right?
Deontay Johnson.
It has to be Mixon, right? So, yeah, a bit of a surprise, but I'm going with Joe Mixon.
I'm okay with that. It's a tough matchup. It's not a great matchup. But if they use him in the passing game, I mean, we've seen him go off for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 yards receiving.
Right. So
on little swing passes.
Oh, yeah. That's, again, I went back and forth, and I'm thinking about, again, what's the script going to be like? And if the script plays out like I think it will, I think Joe Mixon will get a lot of catches, runs. I mean, he should have 20 to 25 touches if they want to win, period.
So even though he hasn't been performing and people might be looking at sitting him, you're saying trust him, put him in the lineup?
Yep. Yeah, because of volume.
Yeah, he should be involved.
Yep.
My second pick is Brian Robinson, the fan of he's, we're a fan of him here on the Sunday Fun Day, guys.
We are.
And I'm staying towards, again, the top of the rankings, kind of like the Mixon pick. Atlanta does have a good run defense too. They've only allowed 14.9 fantasy points per game, which is the 5th fewest. I don't know if that's a touchdown, like a lack of a touchdown susceptibility, because of their last 11 games, they've allowed running backs to exceed their yardage projection 8 times. Brian Robinson's projection on the week is 65 yards. Brian Robinson did struggle against a great Philly defense, but they continued to use him. They continue to give him the rock in the running game, and they also included him in the passing game, which bodes well for him this week against Atlanta.
No, I agree. And again, I looked at this as another one with the game script. I think this is going to be a shootout. Then again, I'll touch on that a little bit later in my picks, my Sunday six-pack. But if that's the case, then I think there's going to be a lot of offensive. There's going to be short drives, a lot of offensive possessions, a lot of chances for people to get touches. And Brian Robinson, Scary Terry, that whole crew with Washington, I think is going to benefit from that type of game script.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you. All right, so let's move on to the wide receiver spot.
Yes.
So the top 12 wide receivers are locked and loaded again. You've got Chase, JJ, Puka, Amon-Ra, Nico, Mike Evans, AJ Brown, even without Jalen Hurts potentially. I think he's still locked and loaded. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, he's got Cooper Rush, Devontae Adams, Scary Terry, Brian Thomas Jr., and T. Higgins.
Mhm.
I see you added a note here. George Pickens off the injury report. Good to
Yeah.
go versus Kansas City. They're on average allowing 20 points to the wide receiver position, middle of the road. Good to know. I didn't see that when I was going through my list here.
Yeah. No.
So that leaves us with the following receivers to consider. Tyreek Hill against Cleveland. Miami has something to play for. Cleveland does not. Sutton versus Cincinnati. Drake London with a new quarterback versus Washington. Malik Neighbors with a quarterback, if you want to call him that, versus Indianapolis. Cooper Kupp. The cup was not half full of recent. Can you trust him against Arizona? Calvin Ridley against Jacksonville. Keenan Allen against Seattle. Devonta Smith versus Dallas. DK Metcalf versus Chicago. Shakir versus the Jets. Jalen McMillan versus Carolina. And Jaden Reed versus Minnesota. Of that entire list, Jason, where does your confidence lie? If you had to pick a wide receiver 2 or a flex, where do you end up?
Well, the one I have the most confidence is Sutton, Cortland Sutton, and the reasons you stated Bo Nix in terms of who you trust is the reason I'm going with Cortland Sutton against the Bengals. We both think this is going to be a shootout, and again, it's all about the game script in terms of the championship week and round. So, what do you think this game is going to be like? We know the over is high. I think it's 49.5,
Yep.
I believe. So, with that being said, everybody thinks it's going to be a shootout. I think Denver last week started to run the ball well. And maybe they try that for a little bit, but at the end of the day, Cincinnati's got too much firepower for you to run the ball. Like, you got to be able to keep up with the Bengals. If you can't do that, you're going to lose. So I expect Cortland Sutton to get a lot of touches. Again, volume. If I'm going with a receiver, it would be Cortland Sutton this week against the Bengals.
He didn't have the greatest of weeks last week, so I'm curious to see how he rebounds against a more susceptible pass defense in Cincinnati.
But they also ran the ball much better last week for the first time ever.
Mhm.
Like, for the first time this year, they ran, and Sean Payton made a concerted effort to run the ball. I think he'll try that. I don't think he'll have the success he had last week. Just my opinion. I think that bodes well for Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton.
So my first pick is Keenan Allen against Seattle. Now I'm going way down in that entire list. Fantasy Pros has Keenan Allen, wide receiver 27 this week. So he was my pick last week, my start of the week last week. And if you trusted him like I did, it paid off, right? I think you can expect more of the same with this week. I believe in him. Caleb Williams trusts him. He seems to be the one consistent piece in a very inconsistent offense, at least over the past handful of weeks. He's put up 73 or more yards and a touchdown in 4 of the past 5 games. Seattle's not great against the pass. They've allowed 21.9 points to the wide receiver position. That's top third or bottom third, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
I think you can trust Keenan Allen one more week when it matters with confidence.
I mean, as we say, it all depends on Caleb. What kind of Caleb Williams are we going to get? This could be a pick that could I feel like this could either be a boom or a bust pick in terms of the production. It's just hard to trust Caleb. Therefore, it's hard to trust anybody on Chicago's team. But if you're going with consistency, Keenan Allen has been the most consistent. I will say that over the last probably month.
Yeah.
It was DJ Moore. It seemed like at the beginning of the year. Now it's kind of shifted to more Keenan Allen and Ronan Duzier. He's starting to get a little bit more touches too. So I'm not sure how that bodes for DJ Moore. But to your point, I think Keenan Allen is it's an interesting pick. I'll say that.
Fantasy Pros has Keenan Allen 3 spots behind DJ Moore. And Odunze,
he's probably low.
He's 45, so about 18 spots back.
Right. Yeah, but no, I can see that paying off. And again, in terms of who Chicago is playing, it's going to be. I've said this a lot already. It's the game script. How do you think the game's going to play out in terms of man, do I think this is going to be a shootout? And again, it's all feel. We don't know until the game starts. We really don't know. But if you're looking for a guy to plug, you got to look at what kind of game it's going to be. Like, are you plugging and playing any receiver from New England or the Chargers with a potential game script of controlling the ball and running the ball in less possessions? Probably not. So again, the Bears like to throw the ball, and typically they give up points and they try to get them back. So the game script could be a lot of throws, and that means potential touches for Keenan Allen.
Could be.
Yep.
Where do you land on your second wide receiver that you believe in?
So my second one this is surprising. I looked at the stats like 3 or 4 times, and it's Cooper Kupp. Now, Arizona is allowing 19.8 points to wide receivers, which is on the lower half. But Cooper Kupp over the last 2 games, 6 targets. 6. This is a receiver that won the Triple Crown a couple years ago. 6 targets in 2 games. He'll get 6 in 1 quarter. I'm trusting Stafford and I'm trusting the Rams because they need to win this game. And I think if they need to win, they're going to go back to trusting Cooper and Puka, not just Puka. So my money is on Stafford and Cooper Kupp big against Arizona this week.
To your point, I just pulled up his numbers.
Ooh.
When he returned back from injury in week 8, he had 8 targets, 14 targets, 7 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets, and then
boom,
3 and 3.
Bottom fell out.
I cannot see that being sustainable. Like, how do you take that major piece of your offense out of the offense?
And they've gotten lucky. They've been barely winning.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have lost both of those games against the Jets and the Niners. So I think they understand that obviously Puka's Puka and he's going to do his thing. But I think they understand they need to get the ball to Cooper Kupp. And I think Stafford knows that he's a veteran QB. He'll make an effort to try to get him the ball early and often.
Might be his game.
Could be.
My second pick is even deeper. I'm going all the way to wide receiver 34 in the Fantasy Pros rankings, and that's Jalen McMillan. Speaking of trust and believing, Baker trusts Jalen. 20 targets over the past 3 games, resulting in 14 for 191 and 4 touchdowns. He ousted K. Dotton, another fan or another player that we're a huge fan of. If Carolina continues to play like they've been playing, and what I mean by that is they're in games, and it doesn't matter who they're playing against. They're not getting blown out anymore.
No.
They might make this a fight, and then you can truly believe in Jalen this week because they're going to throw the ball around.
Again, game script. Think about it. Division game. Tampa needs to win. Has to win. Carolina's been playing. Honestly, they've been playing the best ball they've played in a couple years. Like, if you watch some of these Carolina games, they're more than competitive now. Like, over the last 2 months, they probably should have won at least 2 or 3 of those games. They won last week in overtime. They took Kansas City to overtime, and I believe there was another team they could have beat but didn't. But the point is, the game script suggests that Carolina they're gonna throw the ball, and we know Tampa's gonna throw the ball. So I would expect this one to actually be a pretty high scoring game. Division matchup, so both teams know each other. So you're really not hiding anything. And if Baker trusts McMillan, that's a good thing for McMillan owners. Yep.
I'm eyeing him as a potential keeper for next year.
I would not be shocked about that. That would be a good keeper. Contention on who comes, like if their receiver core comes back intact.
Sure, if Godwin comes back.
Yeah, yep.
But
no, I think that's a great pick. He could be out on, I mean, honestly, he could still be on the waiver wire. As crazy as that sounds. I know he's out on the waiver wire in one of my leagues, and I actually thought about picking him up, but I think I'm in pretty good shape. But
46% owned.
Yeah.
As of yesterday.
Right.
Which waivers haven't run, or did they run? No, they run tomorrow morning.
They run tomorrow morning, yeah.
Yeah, so I do have a question for you, Jason. I know it's a special Christmas edition, but I still have a question for you.
What's up, buddy?
I'm just wondering, what's the best way to get your Christmas morning started right? Oh, we're staying with that one. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not going to change it up? All right. Oh. Ho, ho, ho. Let's go.
You ask and you shall receive, buddy.
Right.
We always got to do the beer. We got Christmas ales. We got all kinds of Christmas beer. Get a little sleigh bells in there. Now we're on to the Sunday six-pack.
Yep. We're going to call it a White Russian for me this time. It's a Christmas miracle.
Oh, all right.
So I'm changing it up. Instead of giving you my 3 picks of the week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some insight into what I found on the Google land as that might help you create some parlays on Christmas Day for that Christmas miracle. So over the last 10 games, all of these numbers are relative to the last 10 games. Starting in Houston, Fairbairn has kicked 1.5 or more field goals 10 out of 10 games. So 100% of the time. Nico Collins has exceeded 80 receiving yards in 8 of 10 games. Going over to Baltimore, Derrick Henry has rushed for 60 yards or more in 10 of 10. Lamar Jackson has passed for 200 or more in 9 of 10. Lamar has also exceeded 1.5 passing touchdowns in the past 8 of 10. In Kansas City, Travis Kelce has 4 or more receptions in 9 of his past 10. Kareem Hunt has 30 or more rushing yards in 8 of his past 10. Going over to Pittsburgh, George Pickens, 40 receiving yards or more, 9 of his past 10 games. Najee has 30 or more rushing yards in 9 of his past 10. And to bring it all the way back around to the kicker position, Chris Boswell has 1.5 or more field goals in 8 of his last 10. So these are just the numbers, right? Obviously, things can change, and it's not a 100% guarantee. But all of these are 80% or greater hit rates over the past 10 weeks.
Well, there you go. I'll give you one more.
Let's
And
go.
I think you know this one. Joe Burrow. No question. I mean, he's last 7 weeks, at least 3 touchdowns over the last. I mean, that's I think he's with Luck. I think Andrew Luck was the last quarterback to do that. Throw 3 or more touchdowns the last, in 7 straight games. So I would add Joe Burrow to that list in terms of over a touchdown and a half. I mean, I think that those are all slam dunks. It sounds like it. That's a heck of a parlay. Listen, I'm gonna copy and paste that into my phone, and you best believe this week I'm gonna do it, and we're gonna see what happens. Seriously, I'm gonna put it all down, and I'm gonna put a couple dollars on it, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, this was just the Christmas special, so it's only accounting for the Christmas game. So you can put together a parlay and sit back and see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. We got Wednesday until Monday. There's a lot of games to be played over the next several days for sure. All right.
What about your 3-pack?
Well, my 3-pack is I'm going over unders this week. So I went quarterbacks last week and everything hit but the Penix one. And hey, he's a rookie, whatever. It's fine. I get it. First game. But I think these are pretty solid. So first over, I got the Bengals versus Broncos over 49.5. Now, Fanatics, we've talked about Bo Nix. We've talked about Courtland Sutton. We've talked about the potential game script in this game. I don't see any reason why this game does not hit over 49.5 points. I think Bo Nix is playing really well. We know what the Bengals are doing on offense. The Broncos did not play good last week. Is that something to keep an eye on in terms of what the Bengals could do? We all know they have better weapons than the Chargers. So what you would expect is the Bengals to come out and throw the ball, regardless if Pat Surtain is out there or not. And I expect this to be a shootout.
Okay. Yep. That 49.5, it's a big number, but
it's a big number. Yep.
If you stay with Detroit, you stay with Buffalo, you stay with the Bengals, you stay with Baltimore, these overs are just hitting left and right.
Right. You got to believe the Bengals at least score 21 points, 28 points, I would think. But we'll see. Second one is Falcons over versus Commanders over 47.5. Now, get your popcorn ready for this Sunday night matchup between Jayden Daniels and Michael Penix. Now, as I mentioned last week, I was very high on Michael Penix. I said those two were the 2 best quarterbacks. Nothing against Caleb Williams, but in college, these 2 were the best quarterbacks in terms of playing a position in college like you were playing in the pro. I think this one's going to be a shootout. Obviously, they both have a lot to play for. I expect Penix to play much better than he did in his first game. The first game is always a little bit tough for a rookie, and we know what Jayden Daniels can do. I mean, these Washington scores at will. The defenses are okay at best, so I expect a lot of points in this Sunday night matchup. Should be a great game.
That one, I question. Let's see how. I
Yep.
don't know if Penix can put up the points. He hasn't needed to yet. Like he
Right.
handed the ball off a ton last
Oh
week.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
47.5 is an extreme, especially with Washington's ability to put up points.
And I
If
think
he just shows up in the slightest bit or Bijan yet again goes off, then
yep. And it's more of Atlanta trying to keep up with Washington. I think
right.
they're going to have
Yeah.
to score points. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the last one is I got the Chargers and the Patriots, but the under is 42. I call this one a throwback game, Blake, meaning that these two teams want to run the ball. Let's be honest. We got Harbaugh, we got Mayo, Bill Belichick disciple. They want to play good defense, control the clock, which means limited possessions for each team, meaning the under is definitely in play in this game.
I did not see that one coming.
Ah, okay.
Not saying that's not a good pick.
No, I get it. Yeah.
I just don't think the Patriots can put up enough points to hit the maybe hit the over. I think the Chargers will put up points. I don't know if the Patriots can.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the Chargers can. I think the Patriots struggle to put up points unless they get a bunch of turnovers, and I don't see that happening with Herbert.
All right. Well, that concludes the Sunday six-pack session
Yes.
segment.
No
But
college bet this week because there's a bowl games. But listen, we'll get into the playoff next week.
I did appreciate the 7-point advice. Notre Dame helped me out on that one. Thanks, Jason.
Oh yeah. Now, I mean, listen again. It's Notre Dame's tradition. I mean, that was a pretty cool scene that Friday night in South Bend. Again, I'm not a huge Notre Dame fan, but I am a college football fan, and you got to appreciate those scenes, no question.
So staying in the Christmas spirit,
Yeah.
I've got potential stocking stuffers. I mean sleepers for
Oh.
Christmas Day.
Okay.
4 of them. Now, if you're in your Super Bowl, you're in your championship, you probably don't need somebody, but maybe this hits home for somebody. Dalton Schultz is number 1. 2 touchdowns and 12 catches in his last 3 games. No Tank Dell. Maybe he gets a bump in usage. Your tight end position. Maybe you had K. Dotton and he's no longer performing. Dalton Schultz might be on the waiver wire and available to pick up and play. Number 2, Rashad Bateman. Consistently getting 3 to 5 looks each game, always running deep routes, but recently they've involved him in the shallow game. 4 of his last 6 catches have gone for touchdowns. Pat Freiermuth, the Muth, broke his 3-touchdown streak last week, but this week he gets the Chiefs, who have struggled against tight ends. So I can see a bump in usage there. And then finally, Kareem Hunt. And even with Pacheco being back, he continues to get touches and usage. 29 touches in the past 2 weeks, equaling 128 yards. So those are all some players that you could throw in your lineup and get productivity out of if needed.
Yeah, I like the 2 I really like are Schultz and Hunt. So if we were doing our regular segment start of the week, Dalton Schultz was actually the guy I was considering because of his uptick in targets and with the situation in Houston. So love the Dalton Schultz, and he's got to be available at this point. The way tight ends are playing, I'd be shocked if he wasn't. So again, if you're looking for a tight end, again, 3rd place game, championship game, he might be someone you want to consider. Yep. And then the Kareem Hunt thing kind of surprises me with Pacheco. I thought Pacheco was going to come in and basically take over, but that has not happened. We all know Andy Reid's a big fan of Kareem Hunt. You know, he never wanted to let him go anyway, but obviously circumstances were the circumstances. But Kareem Hunt is one of Andy Reid's favorite players, and you can tell they like to feed him the ball. And he's physical. He's a physical runner, even not as physical as Pacheco, but right up there. Yep.
And he's good at the passing game too.
Yep. Yeah. I like the stocking sleepers. Love it. Shoot. Santa Blake.
There we have it. No fun fact, but we did have a stocking sleeper.
I like it. So we're on YouTube with my ugly sweater and your debonair look that you got going on. I mean, you look like $1 million, buddy.
Man, that hat was starting to hurt. I had to pull the plug on it.
You're sweating. I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, we're still on the socials, right, Blake?
We are. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Well, Blake, first of all, I want to say Merry Christmas to you and your family. Again, it's been a great year. I can't believe we're in championship week already. It seems to just fly by. We start this thing in August, and now we're into late December, going into 2025. So always a pleasure. Love doing this with you. This is our second year, man. This is
Yeah, and it has flown by. I can't believe
it,
we're wrapping up year 2.
I know, man. It keeps going by. And Fanatics, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate the comments, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yup.
And we keep them coming, And you haven't heard the last from us, obviously. So we'll pop up in your feeds in terms of podcasts on Spotify and Apple.
We will keep it up.
Yes. Well, Fanatics, that's a wrap for this episode of the Sunday Funday Guys Fantasy Football Podcast. And remember, Fanatics, make this Sunday your fun day. All right. Woo! That was good. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a template for next year.
That's enough.